We can be the change. Conquer all the pain. That's one little lie. Yes, I really matter, but we're strong. Yeah, we're stronger when we're eyes together. My India, my India.
Every time I think of you, I think of what can I do. I think of how we made it through. The history, the pain, the journey of how we saved it. I love it, so amazing. Tell me, is this really real? This beauty we can touch and feel. The wrongs will stop, we'll start the healing. Cause you're my mother, you're my brother, you're my sister. Just to crystallize the picture that I'm with you.
I are free in this country of our dreams. I are free in this country of our dreams.
Right, folks, I see 53 of us on the call right now, and I'm sure there are more of us joining us on LinkedIn Live. I would request everybody, like I started sharing on the chat and I saw somebody started off as well. Hi, Krishnendu. I also saw Tanu sharing that Tanu is from Gurugram. Would request you to quickly go ahead on the chat box. Put down your name. Where are you currently from? What's your hope for an equitable India? And one thing you really are looking forward to learning from the session or the space today, right? So I see Rashmi saying, hi, Rashmi. Great. Would request everybody to put your responses on the chat. Hi, Kanupriya, joining from Delhi. An India free from poverty and filled with love. That's exactly what we work towards. And excited to learn and get to know how to get started in the area of policy and governance. And we will just get there, right? With that, I welcome everyone to the space. Hi, I'm Pragya. I work with the recruitment team at Teach for India, and we have a stellar panel and facilitator today planned for you. And without further ado, we'll just go ahead and set norms for today. Keep your mics off if you are not speaking, if you are not sort of sharing. With that, I also have one request. Ensure even if your backgrounds are blurry, your hair is not proper, just go ahead and turn on your videos. It helps the facilitator and the speakers to just know who are our audience. So if your bandwidth permits, go ahead and turn on your videos. The next thing that I will quickly share is that go ahead and share your thoughts and your responses on the chat box. Whatever your questions are, keep putting them down on the chat box. And if you have any questions that you feel are pressing, please go ahead and put them as well, right? With that, here's the agenda for the next, hopefully 1 hour and 15 minutes. We'll run a quick puzzle piece recap of what happened over the last Pathway Exposure series. Then Amay, like our brilliant facilitator, will run us through the alumni stories in policy and governance. And we have 3 stellar facilitators and panelists. Then we'll open up the space for questions. And finally, we'll close out Pathway Exposure series today, right? Great. We move right into the puzzle piece of Pathway Exposure series. You were a part of the Pathway Exposure series, Careers in Social Sector, and we began by talking about enablers of transformational outcomes. Then you were a part of Careers in Education Sector. Then today you are a part of Careers in Policy and Governance. And this is what we call a puzzle piece at Teach for India. This is where most of our alumni are currently working, 4,200 plus alumni. They're working in different paths to be able to have this India that you wrote down at the beginning of the session, to have like an excellent, equitable India. So that is what exactly our alumni are currently a part of, and hopefully 2 years down, all of you will be. Yeah, I'm really excited to get all of us. I see currently 69, 70 of us on the call. With that, I will introduce our facilitator for today. Hi, Amay. Amay currently leads the government relations vertical. He's the senior manager at Teach for India. He was a school leader at iTeach. Before doing the fellowship, he was working at HDFC and was a 2016 fellow. And with that, hi, Amay. Thank you for agreeing to facilitate such a stellar panel. Over to you and the panelists.
Thank you so much, Pragya, for this. Welcome everyone to the Pathway Exposure series and the session on policy and governance. We have three amazing individuals to have on the panel with us, and really grateful for them to be here. Could I have the next slide, please? Great. So we have Nikunj, Archana, and Prateek, all three, please. With us with a diverse range of experience in the policy and governance sector in India and beyond. Prateek was a 2011 fellow. He is currently the director for policy and advocacy at New Globe. He has been a co-founder for Kutulis School of Public Policy, and he completed his MPP from the Harvard Kennedy School. We have Nikunj with us, who was a 2015 fellow. He's currently working as policy consultant, and he also has finished his MPP from University of Oxford and was working on the ground quite some time as project manager for Seva Bharat. And then we have Archana with us, who's a 2017 fellow. She completed her MPA from Columbia and has worked as associate consultant for Satwa and also at JPAL, and has a lot of experience working on policy and research. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us here. We're going to spend the next 10 minutes or so to understand a little bit more about how their journey has been. We'll see what they have been through in the fellowship and beyond, and then we'll start with our panel. Over to you, Prateek, for your quick summary of your experience.
Thanks, Amay, and thanks everyone for making this happen. I was just thinking while you were doing and saying that there were so many sessions which have happened already for the fellows. I remember 2011, I had no clue what I was entering into, and I had no clue what is going to happen once I graduate, if at all I graduate, right? That is also a question mark, because I didn't know what was lying at the other side of the spectrum. I did it because, at that time, too much was happening. India had won the World Cup in 2011. Kejriwal's movement was happening in Delhi. I was frustrated with my corporate job, not knowing what I was doing, making money for people who I didn't even know. All of this culminated into going into a classroom of a 2010 fellow, right? And, getting inspired by the fact that, okay, you could deliver something, right? At least 40, 45 people in the short run could benefit, right? And, when I did the community visit, I met parents, understood that, okay, this is such a, diverse understanding of what is happening apart from what I do in my daily life, right? Which was hanging out in Bandra at that time, like in Andheri, watching a movie in one of the malls, right? And there this was this migrant population out of UP, living in a slum in Kandivali. There was nothing. There was no sewage. There was no water. There was no, proper. There was just all I saw was temples and mosques built inside this thing, and everybody was like all about religion at that time, right? And I didn't understand, like, how could religion be so significant, right? I mean, it was not that significant. I mean, I thought I was religious, but I was nowhere close to the amount of religion those people. So my first understanding of politics came from my first visit into the classroom of a 2010 fellow, right? And I was like, okay, there is too much to learn, right? There's too much to be on the ground. And I said I was young. I could give this 2 years now, right? At my age, when I was, ready to be open to be molded, right? And not, averse or close to the ideas. So I started my journey without having these sessions, to be honest, without knowing what the policy world was all about, right? I was just a curious kid. Right. I was just passionate about my country. Right. I was just passionate about solving problems. Right. I had a BCom degree. Right. So I didn't even have a BCom from NMIMS. Right. I don't know what the value of that degree is now, but at that time it was just another BCom degree. Right. I had not prepared for CA. So I was one of the black sheeps in Bombay doing BCom and not CA, right? Everybody does CA in Bombay when they do BCom, right? So I got a job with S&P, which is Standard & Poor in Powai, brilliant office. They used to fly me out, sometimes business class as well. Food was taken care of. Everything was taken care of, right? I actually had the honor of having a corner desk, right? Which people used to say corner office. In Powai, I had a corner desk, which was overlooking beautiful Powai, right? So everything was fine, right? And, family was happy, friends were happy, I was doing well. But there was this deep sense of what was I doing? What was my place in such a big country, right? And how could I sort of change even one part of it, right? And I joined the fellowship, and I was all over the place, to be honest, right? Why? Because from all those cushy, things which I talked about right now, to being in a classroom with floating desks, floating benches, understanding the life of people who you've no clue about, right? Making connections with them, going into the community. Sometimes the language barrier was too much for me because I was in a Marathi dominated teacher community, right? They used to talk God knows what about me, right? Unfazed by that, I had to still make working relations with them, right? So you started learning negotiations, acclimatization to a foreign climate, right? Getting down to deep into somebody's life, right? Seeing a life which was not yours from a very close quarters, right? And why am I saying this is these are essential skills for policy making, right? Policy making for far too long has been from the echo chambers, right? We are what we are today because nobody thinks about the impact. For example, today they were making a road, downstairs. And so I went up to them and I said, you've been making roads for last 20 days. Have you checked the weather forecast? And they said, no, that's not our job to check the weather forecast. And at the same time, the watering of the median was going on, right? They were watering the plants in the median and the water was overflowing onto the new roads which they were making, right? So there's no coordination between, people making roads, people checking the weather, people watering the plants. Why are we so? Because somebody sitting in 3 different departments randomly decided, let's do this. We have budget for this. New year has started, April 1st, and new financial year, let's deploy capital, right? Without coordinating with each other, right? Now, how do you get a sense of, like, there are other 750 people living in this condominium as well. Nobody has a problem because nobody has lived the life what we have for those 2 years to understand that there's a flaw in policy making, that stakeholders aren't interacting with each other. And that's the first thing you'll see in the classroom, right? First lesson of policy making is stakeholders do not interact with each other. And that's what you'll see when the headmaster doesn't talk to the teachers, teachers don't talk to the parents, parents don't talk to their own children, the children have religious divide, the Muslims won't talk to the Hindus, the upper caste won't talk to the lower caste, all sorts of chaos in the class, right? What happens at the school level happens at the country level. It's just mirror image, right? You're all mirroring what happens even in your households, to the macro environment, right? Because macro is built up of micro, right? That's the first lesson of policy making you learn in the class. And I'll tell you why I came into the field of policy, right? I'll quickly jump because I've been told I have only 4 minutes and I've taken 3 out of it already. The other thing which happened to me was that I signed up all my students for Maharashtra State Scholarship Exam, right? This was the first time Teach for India students were eligible for Maharashtra State Scholarship Exam because we started from 2nd grade and I got 3rd graders and they're only eligible to give this exam in 4th grade, right? I signed up all of them, didn't know how to fill the Marathi forms. Nobody in the school wanted to help me out. Why? Because they said, sir, this is additional work, right? A. B, these students are not capable of clearing these exams. They don't have the brains. They are from poor places. They are meant to be poor in life. They are meant to die like this. That was exact words being quoted by the teachers of these students, right? And I said, ma'am, no matter what happens, at least fill these forms for me. That's your only job. 45 forms, please fill it for me. I will treat you with samosas the next day, right? I bribed them with samosas like anybody in this country has to bribe to get things done. I made them fill the forms. Over the next 1 year, I had to negotiate with the madrasa to allow them to skip the Urdu classes in the evening, the madrasa classes in the evening, to ensure that the children could stay back for extra classes, fight with this HM to give room in the school in which I was teaching, to give extra room, fight with other parents who said that their tuitions are missed and they don't do homework and their books are not filled, right? to ensure that I could make them stay and give. Out of 45, 36 people cleared the exam. This is the first time in the history of school a single student had cleared. One of them got 4th rank out of 2.5 lakh students which sat for the exam, right? So that is where we actually got them to, right? What happened then? System said, we don't have money to pay you. Somebody took the money. We don't know who took the money. The money which was supposed to go to them just vaporized. Nobody knew where the money went. So what parents came to me and said, sir, we told you, you made them skip the madrasa classes, tuitions, God knows what will happen to them. The Maulvi is angry with us, right? And you are now saying that there's no money in the system. Then I wrote to, this is my first policy experience, right? I wrote to Nandan Nilekani's team at Aadhaar, right? Saying that you're building Aadhaar. Can we link Aadhaar to scholarships and create direct benefit transfer in the account of students? I got a, come and meet me note, right? I pitched the idea. In next year, I got the 3 months in which you get in the first year and the second year, I got that time off to ensure that I could go to Delhi, spend 3 months at the Aadhaar office. I wrote an approach paper on how this activity will work out. By the time I graduated, my students got the money because pilot happened in Bombay with McKinsey leading the pilot with MCGM, which is the Mumbai Corporation. And not only my students got in, within the next 3 years, 30 million students were benefiting out of the scheme, right? Now, this scheme could not have been made had I not stepped into the classroom, because people sitting right up there in the echo chambers don't understand what we do, right? And the people who are actually teaching have no understanding of how to put the 2 and 2 together. So it is our job, it is your job to see what is working out on the ground or what is the systemic failure on the ground and connect it to the macro and try for a policy change. So this was my first twist with policy. This is the actual work which got me full scholarship to go to Kennedy School, which I could not afford to do masters in public policy. World Bank read this paper and said, we'll pay for it. We'll give you a scholarship. We'll give you a stipend. I actually saved 20 lakh rupees out of my master's degree and came back to India and used that as a startup capital to actually, set up Kautilya School of Public Policy, which I believe will work with all of you once you graduate to actually ensure that we can build in India-specific cadre for policy professionals who can actually do this work, what I've been doing. I believe that India is now at a cusp where public policy jobs, and you can Google it, don't trust me for it. After this, go to LinkedIn, search for public policy jobs in India, see the number of jobs which come in, right? And see the 150, 160 jobs which are out there at each level, right? This is only going to grow every year at around 30-35%. That's the growth of this industry. So anybody looking to follow policy and get into the work of formulation and actually implementation, you are at the right place at the right time. 10 years back, when I started, very few roles. Even when I went to Kennedy in 2016, very few roles. All of this started happening when the pandemic hit us, when the governments realized that we need professionals in each field. Education was shut down, healthcare was gone, infrastructure was gone, migrant population was suffering. You throw a stone and there was a problem there, and there was no solution in sight, right? Where is the solution going to come from? Solution is going to come from these 73 people sitting right here, trying to find their place in the ecosystem. And this is, I can say this, I've been in the sector for what, 13 years. I joined the sector in 2010. My first job was also in education, and now it is 2023. It's been 13 years. And I can say this with authority that public policy space is only going to grow, and it's only going to absorb more of you. And don't think that, oh, it doesn't pay. I get paid market rate for doing public policy work, by the way, right? You have to build yourself, and the real understanding comes in these 2 years in the classroom. So you are not just teaching there. You're keeping your eyes and ears open, trying to find how to actually, put the problem and the solution together, right? That's where I would end. Your job is to have the mindset to look at data, evidence, look at the problem from, the question of whether it's, it can stand the test of judiciary, administration, politics, get these three together. Now, nobody will have a problem. Like if parents, children start getting scholarship money, Politicians are happy because they're going to be like, wow, administration is happy, money is going smoothly. Judiciary wise, it is good. It can stand the test of judiciary. Everyone's happy. You got a solution. So it is your job to connect these dots in these 2 years of your fellowship. And I firmly believe that there's no better experience than Teach for India to teach you that. I rest my case. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Prateek, for sharing your experience with us. What stands out to me clearly was your journey of moving from a reality check to knowing yourself and your deep understanding of curiosity, passion, and problem solving, making peace with that discomfort, and then moving to work on impact by going above and beyond first and foremost, and even more importantly, by showing initiative and ownership and going beyond the lettered word of your job description. Right? That's very, very important for our fellowship. When we write, are you ready to accept the challenge? That's what we mean. And I think you did it really well. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the build yourself aspect, which you brought up, which is very important. We're going to talk about it more in the panel discussion. But let's hear from Nikunj. Nikunj, just a quick reminder, you'll have 4 minutes to talk about everything similar to what Prateek has mentioned. But Prateek was a 2011 fellow. What has your experience been as a 2015 fellow? And then we can go ahead from there, right?
Sure. Thank you so much. I mean, first of all, I feel like it's very unfair that I have to follow Prateek. And then afterwards, again, Archana is going to come. So I'm more like a filler in like 2 spotlighted, I would say, speakers. So just putting it out there. But I'm quickly going to share my screen to kind of share like a nice PPT. As policy consultants, we love slide decks. So here's another one for you. Just putting it out there. So just give me a thumbs up if you're able to see the screen. If not, that's okay. It's your internet. So very quickly, I'm going to talk about like a journey that I have been on, right? So it's going to be a little interactive. So what I would love for everyone is I'm going to ask 1 or 2 questions over the next 2 slides. Since I have less time, please quickly share your answers to those. But I would love if there's a barrage of answers come up, right? So the first question I actually want to ask everyone is, what jobs or roles come to your mind when you think of public policy? So just quickly put down in the chat box, what are the kind of roles that come to your mind? I think there are people on LinkedIn, so they can put it there as well. So anything that comes. I'll take a pause here. Civil services, I'm reading. Kanupriya is writing child protection, consultancy, policy analyst, research analyst, advisories, government. Yeah, Chesha is also mentioning civil services, right? Keep the responses coming. Now, one of the big things is that when we think of public policies, there are all these things that come to mind: civil services, consulting, legislation, public administration, and all of these. And these are right answers. However, public policy doesn't exist in a silo, right? I think that everyone is part of public policy, essentially. Key thing that we keep on missing, and someone reached very closely there. Someone, I think Mayank mentioned school leaders, but who is implementing the policies? It's in the school, it's the teachers and the school principal. In the Anganwadi system, it's Anganwadi workers, ASHA workers who are implementing that, right? So one thing that we keep on forgetting when we think of public policy is that there is an idea of public policy that has come out there, which involves consultants, government, bureaucrats. Again, all of them are doing that, but then there are a lot of other folks involved in public policy. Not-for-profits are doing policy advocacy. They're helping, distributing essential schemes and helping them reach to people. They are doing public policy work. Think tanks are giving important research. There are last mile policy implementers. So I think I just wanted to put it out there because we can expand our horizon of what policy means to us. So very quickly, okay, I'm quickly going to talk about fellowship, right? Again, same thing. This is the last time I'm going to ask you to do something. 97 is the number that's written over there. Quickly put down in the chat box, what do you think 97 represents in terms of my fellowship? Again, I'll take 5 seconds. By the way, this is also a good crash course on how do you teach. So you're getting a lot of benefits in one go. So I think Rashmi has got it right. So I'll just move there, right? So I taught a classroom of 97 students in an all-girls government school in Sangam Vihar, New Delhi. Mine wasn't even the biggest classroom. There were classrooms with 130 students. The same school existed as in the morning as a girls' school, and in the afternoon became a boys' school, which was pretty common in many Sarvodaya Kanya Vidyalayas and like Sarvodaya Vidyalayas in general in New Delhi, right? So when you think of people-teacher ratio and other kind of things, they're totally out of the window. And I'll show you in the last slide a couple of pictures from my fellowship days. Now, on most days, when I was walking to the classroom, one of my students had already been sexually harassed the previous night by someone who is close to their family. There is a student in my classroom who hasn't eaten for more than 18 hours because she's taking care of her siblings, being the eldest child, and her parents are not around. There is a kid who has been beaten up right in the morning or has been eve teased on the way to school. On rainy days, you just can't walk into the school because you are in the water stomach down. Now, when I think about it, and I create an excellent lesson plan, I plan my curriculum very well. Do you think that will have the intended impact? I don't think so. Because what's happening is that I have all these students who are going through daily struggles every day. They have visible and invisible disabilities. They have their own learning styles, and they're going through a myriad of problems. And why mentioning this? Because this was the first thing I realized while walking into the classroom. Like, what is the problem? Am I solving the problem of education, or am I solving the problem of education plus nutrition plus gender and whatnot? Or am I even equipped, or should I even be solving the problem, right? So these are all the questions that came to mind. There are so many policies that also exist. It's not for the lack of policies. As in the school, as a school teacher, you will realize how many policies are coming for the school children, right from midday meal scheme to things like scholarships for minority students, to overall infrastructure-based policies. So a lot of things are getting implemented on a day-to-day basis. But again, are they actually solving the challenge that they're meant to solve? Are they actually having the intended impact that Pratik was very rightly pointing out as well? And lastly, where is that community? Where does that community exist? Pratik hinted at, like, where are the stakeholders? And that was another insight that I had. For example, you are working with the students, but then there are parents to think about. There are community members to think about. There are school leaders and the school staff to think about. There are local level counselors to think about. And there are so many more stakeholders that exist in the school system. It took me a really long time to interact with all of them and actually thinking about, what is the role they are playing and how can I support their initiatives versus always thinking how they can help me as well, right? Now, just looking at all this picture, right? A fellowship is essentially a public policy opportunity because you are working as a last mile policy implementer, understanding what's happening in the policy ecosystem, not just education, but education plus a lot of other policy areas. You're getting and understanding what kind of policies are coming for the or the community members at large. And then you're also interacting with a variety of stakeholders as well, right? And now I'm not even going to the skills. And that is the picture to think about when we think of public policy and fellowship at the intersection of the two. Now, very quickly, I'll talk about policy building blocks in fellowship, right? And from my lens, if the emoticons are not understandable, that's okay. But the first one I would say is you are going to be a social justice warrior walking into the classroom and act that way. You're not going to work just on education, but you're going to work on other things. And from a lens of social justice as well, think about all those things that are happening, right? For example, one of the lessons we did in the classroom was around local elections. Local elections were going on and students went and asked the counselors, what are they going to do for them? Because they're asking for votes. They pretty much ignore the students, right? Because they don't have voting power. And through experiences like this, you can essentially, think through how policies getting impacted from so many different lenses and not just from a bureaucratic lens, but you're also thinking about executive and elections as well. And I highly recommend thinking through from that lens. I think the second one is there are so many Be the Change projects that you can start. Like I started a community center with 3 amazing people. Rather, it was Sayami and Prachi whose idea I rather like co-opted into their idea. And 4 of us with Sneha started a community center because we felt a need for that. I won't talk a lot about it. But with community center, I essentially learned things like how do I invest stakeholders? Because it's a community center. So that's a skill I was gaining. I learned skills like design thinking with Udyami, which was started by the 2 program managers of the time, Chandni and Ashia. I learned the skills of adaptive leadership through an initiative called PQ. Now, I'm listing all these things, right? Because it's such a safe environment for you to kind of explore everything. Be mindful. And in the next slide, I will talk about that, but be mindful and try to explore anything and everything that you can. There's so much room for failure. And through failure also, you will learn so many other things as well. And I highly encourage, just go out there and just try to, just experiment, fail, try different things and learn. But I think don't forget one thing I would, and that should be there across your policy journey, which is privilege. Most of you who are on this call and you're being selected, you're English speaking folks like me. That's a privilege in it. We walk into these community centers with all of our privilege, with all of that idea that, hey, I'm going to solve. Rather than forgetting, okay, let's listen, let's learn, let's go out there. You're a blip into the Asian. 2 years is a blip into your policy career, but 2 years is a blip into the life of a student as well, right? So don't walk with so much ego. Don't walk with like a lot of idea about, okay, I'm here to solve something. Just spend a lot of time in understanding the problem in the first place, right? Build those important relationships as well. And that's how I would highly encourage. But be mindful about your journey. And here is something that I quickly want to say. Like, how do you be mindful? So imagine your career as a game and then ask questions like, what game are you playing? What are the rules of this game? How do players advance in this game? How do players lose in this game? Is this game still serving you? And is this game still serving the society? So when you're thinking of your policy career or your fellowship career or any sort of career, think very mindfully about these larger things. I think my time is up. So I'll quickly kind of end with something that I quickly want to talk about, so about my post-fellowship journey. So after Teach for India, I actually was lucky to join International Innovation Corps as a policy consultant, where I worked on early childhood education with Department of Education, Rajasthan. I worked on women entrepreneurship platform with Niti Aayog, which was around women's entrepreneurship and leadership. I worked on policy evaluation with Grey Matters. And after that, and this is where I want to take a pause, I was lucky to go to Oxford on a Shevling scholarship. And the reason why I'm mentioning over there is that a lot of you may be walking into the mind, hey, we need to go to the policy school. Not necessarily. Rather, I would say take a pause. Just dip your toes in whatever kind of policy work you can do. Gain some key insights. And afterwards, use that space, the skills, the mindset, everything that you've learned and apply into the policy school. And that's how you can do better. Pratik did something wonderful, and how he mentioned, like, that's how he got into Kennedy, right? So be mindful of that. And right now, I'm very lucky to be working with G20 Secretariat on a gender policy platform on women's leadership and entrepreneurship as well. Always happy to talk about it. But this is a very brief intro about that. And these and a lot of other opportunities exist for you in policy space. A little bit of homework. As a teacher, always a teacher, I can't leave you without homework. So these are the 3 books I will highly recommend reading. Most of you before the institute. Again, these are not the books, right? These are the books I have guided me a lot. Everybody loves a good draft. P. Sainath, excellent crash course in everything you want to know about India. Still relevant to this day. Invisible Women by Caroline Perez. Men, all the men on the chat, you definitely should read it, if not women. So I'm looking at you, and definitely read it and understand how policy is actually created with a huge data points, including gender. And Pedagogy of the Oppressed is just an excellent book for you to teach, for you to learn, and you to understand privilege and oppression. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nikunj, for taking us through your journey. What stood out to me uh, in what you mentioned were two really strong aspects, that everyone is a part of public policy, particularly the implementators. We somehow seem to leave them out of the loop most of the time, but those are the key components of driving, designing, as well as implementing the public policy. And most important was putting names and faces to the people we work with, right? It's not just about statistics and numbers and a group of people we are impacting, but it's more about the short-term and long-term lives of people we are impacting. So just thank you so much for taking us through that, Nikunj. We'll hear more from you about how important implementation and staying on the ground and working feels, because I could connect with that really strongly. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the discussion. But over to you, Arjuna, for a short introduction and journey for yourself.
Great, thank you so much. I'll just pull up my screen as well. Just give me 1 second. Okay, hi everyone. I'm so glad to be here, and it was wonderful to listen to Nikunj and Prateek speak as well. And I think a lot of what I will say will thread through similar learnings, and it's wonderful to see how these things kind of connect. So quickly jumping into it, and I've been asked to be really crisp, so I will do just that. I also tend to be a really fast speaker, so I hope you guys keep up. So I started with a bachelor's in engineering in Bangalore, and I was very passionate about engineering. I always liked maths and physics. And I had like the good luck to be in a college where they encouraged us to tinker and do different things, do projects. A lot of the projects I was doing was, I had in mind, like, I wanted to help people. I wanted to see how I could make technology useful in a sense. For instance, our final year project was like this thing, we wrote a neural network implementation to try and automate the detection of a certain disease in retinal images. So I thought I was going to go off and do a master's in artificial intelligence, machine learning, all that sort of thing. But I felt that in some way I had access to solutions, but I didn't really know what the problems were. I knew I wanted to help people, but I had no idea what people around me wanted to be helped with, or, I didn't know what their problems were. And so I decided, to be a little bit more thoughtful about what my priorities were career-wise. I wanted to do socially useful work. I wanted to do something that helped people. I wanted to keep my personal curiosity alive. I really like learning. And I did not want to get bored in a very mechanical kind of job, right? And I tried like a few projects in engineering, both in the corporate space and in the public sector. And I didn't feel like I wanted to do that for the rest of my life. And I wanted to be in a space where I was more continuously inspired in that sense. I also wanted to be in a fun environment. I wanted to work in jobs that were more people-centric, which, if maybe is a little bit far away from most engineering jobs, unfortunately. Or that's how I felt then, right? And so with these priorities, I applied to the Teach for India Fellowship. And this has been one of the greatest decisions I've made. I actually came into the fellowship with some idea about public policy. I actually had seniors in my engineering school who'd gone off to study policy. I didn't have a really good idea on what public policy was or what jobs in that space would look like, but I knew I wanted to explore this. Right. And so when I joined the fellowship, I had a clear kind of plan. I had this idea that this was going to be, what I would be trying to explore and kind of trying to work through that. So I'm just going to walk you through some of my thoughts during the fellowship, what my thought process was and how I kind of planned my 2-year span, right? So there were 4 things that I was thinking about then, and, I've kind of organized some of this that way. Firstly, I wanted to understand the ground reality better. In a lot of ways, this was an effort for me to go understand the problems. So it was really important for me to spend time in the communities and try and keep an open mind and try and understand this space. I did not want to be a tourist in other people's lives for 2 years. For 2 years, I wanted to be a teacher full-time. I wanted to know more about what it meant to actually care about these people and be dedicated in that space. I started with engage, and I think this, if nothing else, I think this would be like my advice, to spend the first year and a good chunk of the first year trying to really understand your basic work, which is being a teacher, which is not at all easy. And with the little training we're given, it's, we're definitely not completely equipped. So we have to go in being learners first. I started reading the NCF, the curricular frameworks. I started, deep diving into the textbooks to try and understand, okay, how can I make this most interesting for my students? How can I make sure that my students fall in love with learning and have that same curiosity and appreciation for maths and science, or literature, all of these other wonderful things that they should be learning about. I spent most of my first year making sure, like a couple of months, making sure that my classroom was on point and that I was proud of being in this classroom. There's actually a lot of content in Teach for India, and there's a lot of other fellows. You have such a good community, all of the LCs, where you can constantly reflect on, how your classroom is doing and to improve that. And I think that should be your first priority. Once I felt that my classroom was in a good shape and in that sense, students were able to take some amount of ownership in their own learning, I started to focus on the question of what does the school need? What do other teachers need? What do other classrooms need? What can I do that will systematically help the school, right? And once I felt I had started some actions in that direction, I started to spend more and more time in the community. And I think, like Nikunj said, you realize very quickly that improving learning outcomes is about so much more than what happens in the classroom, right? It's related to so many other things. And when you go into the community, you kind of realize that there's a lot of these interrelated things. And I think making sure that you're listening and understanding and spending enough time in the grassroots is the most important thing in this space. And honestly, at every policy job I've done after that, being someone who's actually spent time inside of a classroom is a valuable thing to bring to the table, because a lot of other people that are making policies or speaking about policies have not had this kind of experience where they know what it is like to be teaching and being inside of a classroom, right? Next, I'd like to talk about the kind of skills that I was focused on when I was in the fellowship. The first two are soft skills. And I think if you do all of the bits in the first part correctly, which is engaging with the content, classroom, school, and community, you will build stakeholder management skills, right? And I would also say do projects. There's so much opportunity to collaborate with other fellows and start projects, whether at classroom level or school level. And there are more regular projects that happen. Like I worked with the Hala Bowl team, and a lot of these things, right? I worked with the SMC in the school to kind of set it up and see how collaborative problem solving could work in a school environment. So stakeholder management is a really important skill in public policy, and you should be able to explain to your employers or even policy schools why you're good at doing that, why you understand stakeholders of the system, right? And secondly, I think attention to detail, because you will learn very quickly, once again, that consistency is really important in the fellowship. And with children in general, you need to be consistent as a person in terms of what you say and what you do. And that self-discipline in having attention to the smallest things is also really important to the policy space. And most of what I speak will be from a policy research perspective, because my experience has been in that area. But in terms of the hard skills, I think writing and data skills are really important. And these are skills that you can definitely start building through your fellowship. If you say you start a blog to kind of start thinking about your experiences, process them, it's a great opportunity to build your own voice and your own opinion, and also share your learnings with the wider world. So writing, I think, is definitely an important skill. And finally, data skills. So at this point, everyone was starting BTCPs, and I felt that in a lot of ways, the BTCPs that fellows do, the change projects that fellows do, tend to be what they are passionate about. Like some fellows like to sing, some fellows like to dance, so they train, for instance, and then they start projects in that direction. And I wasn't sure that this is what the communities needed. So I did a needs analysis kind of research study, and I reached out to my fellowship city was Hyderabad. So I reached out to a professor in Hyderabad Central University, and I said, listen, I've done some research in engineering. I have no idea what research in social sciences looks like. Can you help me? Right? And this professor was wonderful, and she helped me kind of develop this basic understanding of social sciences research, become more comfortable with the gray areas of how do you talk to people and how do you get this information? And by then I had realized that, this is what I wanted to do. In a lot of ways, at the grassroots, people have a lot of knowledge and they know what they want, and policymakers don't have access to this information. So the thing I was worried about was, how do we get this rich knowledge of their own lives from the grassroots to reach policymakers? And data seemed to be that missing link for me. And when I went out and did this needs analysis project, I designed focus group discussions, interviews, and talked to lots of people. And I started understanding that once you go out and talk to people, there is so much you can learn. right? And so this needs analysis, again, was a really important thing that I'd done, and it really helped me understand, kind of figure out my own passion for data, right? Third is the exposure and network piece. Like I said, I didn't really know what public policy was. So one thing I did early on was tell my program manager that, listen, this is something I want to explore. Can you help me? Right. And reach out to other TFI alumni. And, like these guys said, there's so many of us working in the policy space now that if you're interested in a particular organization, if you want to do an internship somewhere, if you want to volunteer somewhere, it's very likely that you have a TFI fellow sitting on the other side. So you should definitely make use of this network, reach out to people and see, where that will take you. My program manager, for instance, connected me to Center for Civil Society, and they had this very small crash course for a couple of weeks. And I think I did this, in the 3-month summer break. And the course was essentially, what even is public policy, that kind of a course. But I had a fascinating time, and I went to Delhi for a couple of days, and I met with a lot of researchers who were working in this space. They were working in understanding public versus private schools. They were understanding the experiences of street vendors and how that connected to the local economies. And this seemed like very interesting work to me, right? And I tried to explore that some more. So internships and volunteering is definitely something that you guys should leverage more. And there's a lot of options out there, like YLAC, or like Young Leaders Action something. This was famous when I was a fellow. There are so many online courses. I actually did an online course at UC Berkeley during my fellowship, and this was a very theoretical what is public policy analysis kind of course. And I really enjoyed it. And in some way, because I had chosen to do this course, I didn't feel like I was studying it. I felt like I was exploring it, right? And when you take ownership of your own learning, you tend to enjoy it a lot more. And finally, I would say be intentional, but be gentle about it. There's no use getting obsessed over, oh, this is what I want to do and nothing else. So definitely keep an open mind. And like Nikunj said, I think it would be a great idea to start reading a lot more and kind of seeing, that will help you build knowledge and understanding, and also place it in a larger context, right? What does this mean for systemic occurrences like oppression or like social justice? Some of these, all of this is very central to the work we do as fellows. And I think it's reading and engaging with literature outside that will possibly help in that some more. And I think keeping your resume in mind and thinking that, okay, I'm doing this project, but how can I fit this into the narrative of what I want to be, is also something to do. And at this point, I actually read Poor Economics, which was a book written by Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee. And it was about the use of RCTs, or randomized controlled trials, in evaluating the impact of policies, right? And I was extremely moved by it. I loved that it had math and statistics, and it just made a lot of sense to me. So post-fellowship, the first thing I did was reach out to JPAL, which is Jameel Poverty Action Lab. It was set up by Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee. They recently won a Nobel for their work in this area. And honestly, I didn't know much about JPAL, but I knew I wanted to be working in research and data, right? So I joined as a research associate with the RISE program, which is called the Research on Improving Systems of Education program, right? And in every way, as amazing as my fellowship experience was, my JPAL experience was, even like a really sharp learning curve for me. So I worked on experimental evaluations, which is what JPAL does. We only do policy evaluations, and we evaluated only using one method, which is experimental evaluations. What they do essentially is split beneficiaries into treatment and control groups and try to measure if there is an improvement in that policy, right? And to be, in that sense, evidence-based in studying whether a certain policy will actually improve outcomes or not. So I actually worked through a variety of evaluations. We evaluated RT 121C, which is, in Chhattisgarh, which is the reservation of 25% of private school seats for children from low-income or SC/ST backgrounds. I worked on evaluations of MindSpark, which is an education technology product, which essentially has a personalized learning component, and also some early childhood education projects. Most of my time as a research associate was actually spent in the field. I did intense field work for months together across Telangana and Rajasthan, where I visited households, schools. And again, this was a way to kind of it gave me like a bird's eye view of the system in a sense, because I went to numerous schools and asked.
Just jumping in, if you could wrap up in 30 seconds, that will be great.
Excellent. So fieldwork was a really important portion of what I did as a research associate, and that was fun, but also to get an understanding of research itself, right? And how that was done. This led me to doing a master's in public administration, which I'm actually still studying and hopefully will graduate in May. It's been great here to be a part of a globally diverse classroom and learn from folk in different spaces to understand across countries what is similar and what is different. It's quite an inspiring space. I also got a full scholarship, and it's nearly impossible, I think, without scholarships to kind of do some of this because it's really expensive. Again, in the summer, I came back to Andhra Pradesh to do fieldwork and run a research project with the government of Andhra Pradesh. And I also did some consulting work with Satwa, who were doing international expansion into US and Europe markets, as well as USAID. So this has mostly been my journey. I'm happy to talk to you guys about more. My email is here, so feel free to reach out to me if you should have any questions or want me to connect you to some of these organizations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Archana, for taking us through your journey. Loved the hard skills, soft skills part, which we just discussed. And actually, that's something which we'll start with in terms of the panel discussion. Could we have the panelists on screen, please? Yes. The others as well, everyone, please. Thanks, Pragya.
Amay, you can go ahead and just like keep adding, going on ahead.
Great, no worries. All right. So this we'll start with what Archana started talking about, right? So in the fellowship, what would you recommend are some key knowledge, skills, and mindsets? Starting where Archana mentioned, and then maybe just adding on to a couple of them. You all also mentioned like curiosity, passion, and some of these other things. Just add on to them for us. What were some key knowledge, skills, and mindsets you developed during the fellowship, which have been crucial in your current role, right? We'll start with Nikunj, then Archana, then Prateek.
Yeah, sure. I think in terms of knowledge, I think it's just knowledge about the ecosystem in general. And when I'm saying ecosystem, the ecosystem around you, right? It can encompass anything and everything based on how much you want. So something as simple as don't restrict yourself to the school system. Go out there and look at the public health centers. Look at the Holla clinics, for example, and look at all these like different spaces. Similarly, want to increase your knowledge, talk to everyone in the ecosystem. Talk to the school, to local counselors, talk to the people who, sweep the streets, talk to, pretty much anyone. Like I will quickly talk about, I'll talk about like stakeholders. Similarly, in terms of skills, you learn so many skills, right? You learn policy communication, which is a big skill. I can't even tell you. How do you communicate as a teacher? You're learning those skills. How do you communicate something well in an easy manner? Which research is failing half of the times, unfortunately, in my limited opinion. Similarly, you're learning skills like systems thinking, problem solving, leadership in a lot of different ways. And leadership, the definition is so broad as well. And the mindset, I think one of the things is like, be okay with failure, humility, like that attitude of, okay, no, let's see what we can do next, right? But more than anything, I can't stress this enough again. Like just listen. I think half the problem is like we don't only listen, right? I mean, just listen and just go out there and listen. So I'll stop there.
Awesome, Nikunj. Archana, learners first. Love that thought. Could you elaborate on a few more mindsets which you feel are very important, which the fellowship helps you develop, which helps in your current role?
Sure. So I think some of this was, I think I learned from other talks like this during my fellowship as well. But one thing that I learned was to always be able to zoom in and zoom out, both in your time as a fellow, as well as if you're ever interested in going into policy spaces, to be able to understand the micro, which is your interaction with individuals. They're really important, but also to try and place that in the larger context of things and what is the big picture takeaway from this, right? So that kind of zoom in, zoom out perspective is helpful, but also in terms of skills, someone had told me that a T-shaped skill base is what you want. You want a wide variety of relevant skills to the space, but also you want one or two things that are your expert, you have expertise in that area. So I think that kind of framework of thinking might help.
Awesome. And Prateek, in terms of skills, right? We have heard a couple of soft skills, hard skills, which have come up. Tell us a few which you feel have been really important in your journey, which you learned in the fellowship, and also add on with what were those spaces where you developed those skills during the fellowship.
I think, we were also blessed that the mentorship program at that time had started. And, I had Luis Miranda as my mentor. And, I think it's about trying to connect, as I said, what is happening in the classroom to the wider ecosystem out there, right? Your job is to learn and create impact in the school, in the classroom you are, with a firm eye on what's your placed in the larger ecosystem. And I think your job at Teach for India is twofold, right? You're part of the larger nation building process as well, right? So while Teach for India will give you an excellent platform to create impact in the short run, but also provided you're able to zoom out and how much you're able to zoom out at the same time, allow you to meet people during conferences, meet people for your mentorship sessions, alumni, because now there's so many alumni working at top places. Connect with the alumni, reach out to them. I didn't leave my email ID, but Archana, reminded me that, this is a great way for, we never had this. In 2011, we had a bunch of 30 total alumni, so now look at the alumni base, right? Reach out to them, understand what they do, what skills are needed to get there, network with them. And by network, I don't mean just like, pester them for a job, right? It network means to actually, understand, what they do, how they do, and what is the way you can sort of, replicate what they're doing. And I would say also, try to sort of focus on understanding data, right? A lot of data comes out from classroom, right? I was also, assisting my program manager, managing the other classrooms when, program advisor, I think that's still there, that role. I don't know, but at that time we had the program advisor role, and, looking at the data at the 9-10 school level, doing slicing and dicing with the data. So I think if you want to be successful in the field of public policy, you cannot run away from data. Right? You cannot say, oh, I'm bad with Excel. I'm bad with, showcasing data through, all these pivots and tables, etc. Right? You can't do that in policy. Policy is all about number crunching. Policy is all about being comfortable, right? And I was not somebody who was comfortable. So I allowed myself to sort of be there, play with those data sets, understand, right? Color code them, right? All these things might sound really, really childish, right? To somebody who's already done an MBA or who's already working at top level. But at that time, when we were starting out our journey, playing with Excel 15 years back was something which I did a lot, right? And became comfortable. And I think take the journey seriously. Just immerse yourself, as Nikunj and Archana were pointing out, right? Try to, because now Teach for India is so set in those schools in which you'll step in. You won't have to face the issue of, अरे ये कहाँ से आ गए हैं, ये आ गए कपड़े पहन के अच्छे, अपना टिफिन बाहर से McDonald's से लेके आते हैं, right? Those issues are not there. There is a perfect understanding of, by the way, I once took McDonald's and my headmaster actually said, "Arey waah, mere liye laaye ho, thank you." And he ate my food and I couldn't say anything because I was trying to build a relationship, right? So build relationships, be, forthcoming, and I think the best part about your journey is the free biryani you're going to get or free chole puri you're going to get in the community. And don't try to say, oh, no, I'll fall sick and I'll fall sick. If you don't fall sick, you'll not understand what's wrong with India, right? So, you got, as Nikunj was saying, failure is something which can teach you. So just don't be averse to, saying, okay, I will nitpick and say, I'll do this, this, and this, and this is something where I'll not get into. Don't do that. So don't be restrictive. Just do everything and focus on understanding your place in the larger ecosystem in the 2 years.
Yeah, love the thoughts coming in, right? Zooming in and zooming out has come predominantly from everybody, particularly in policy, right? Because you start working on depth and then you move to working at larger impact. Also loved the building relationships and stakeholder management component and the focus on data, very, very important to keep. It's you mentioned, Prateek, pioneering, right? You started in 2011. It's been 10 years for you, 5, 6 for Nikunj, 4, 5 for Archana as well. I'd just like to know, and it'll be good for the group to know as well, how has your understanding of policy and governance and the roles career one plays in it evolved for you from like pre-fellowship to during fellowship and then post-fellowship? Whoever would like to start, and then we can build from there. Archana, why don't you start us off? You had some thoughts
Sure.
on pre-fellowship and then ahead with that. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I think definitely pre-fellowship, I was very excited and naive in the sense that I thought, yes, I'm going to change everything in 5 days kind of excitement. And yes, thank God that has hopefully matured into a more patient and kind of outlook now. But during my time at JPAL, I actually got to see the end-to-end of the research to policy pipeline, and that helped me get like some rooting in the reality of the system in a way that how things would change, what could change and what can't in some way. But also, I think right now there's a lot of policy adjacent roles coming into being, right? Like I think Prateek mentioned, the space is really growing. A lot of governments are open to engagement. There's a lot of ways that you can do policy work, whether consulting, research, tech skills, like someone was mentioning, all of these different kind of skills can come into play. And I think whereas during the fellowship, I had lesser confidence that, what can someone at a very entry level position do in this space? That has changed a lot. Right now, I believe that entry level folk have a lot to give. And I think that kind of enthusiasm and, the ability to learn quickly is really useful in this space. So I think that kind of thinking has shifted.
Great, Archana. Prateek, would you like to add to that or get your own perspective?
I think, what I love to sort of say is don't just box yourself, right? What really happens is that I came with no preconceived notions pre-fellowship, right? And that's what I would tell others as well. While you would want to sort of say, okay, ye alumni kya karte hain, ye wo kya karte hain, I think institute is the best part, right? You meet, this is your network, right? So you're not only networking with people outside of the fellowship, you forget that post-fellowship, these are the fellows you will relate to because, this is what happened during your 2 years as a batch, right? For example, now good part is that all the fellows I worked with are now, close to being a, senior director, CEOs, COOs in organization, right? So for me, I meet them on a daily basis, right? It's not something which, I don't have to even make an effort. I was in San Francisco, I meet somebody. I was in New York, I meet somebody, right? I went to Kennedy with 2 other fellows, with me, right? So from the same batch, I would say, don't have any preconceived notions before coming into fellowship, and post fellowship stay connected with the relations which you make now. And I think the best part about TFI is it's not competitive, right? It is not like you're trying to outdo each other ki mera rating itna acha hoga that I'll get a promotion, right? You are trying to sort of create a collective impact. I think the collective journey is something which you will learn at the institute. So at the institute, try to also spend time on knowing each other deeply, right? I think if those deep connections are built now, these are 30-35 year connections which are going to last with you, right? This is your support system, right? Trust me, nobody outside your ecosystem will understand ki, that kid, which always creates trouble in the class, right? You will talk like kids, and people will not understand how could you have kids at such young age, right? So, these are the people who will understand you, stand with you, and also grow with you in the ecosystem, right? So I think pre-fellowship, don't have any preconceived notions. Post-fellowship, stay connected to your cohort and use these 2 years to build those journey, on cementing those relationships. And I think I've built, friends across the spectrum with people who I've never imagined would have connected had I not come to the fellowship.
It's fantastic, Prateek. Yes, Archana.
So I just wanted to add that post-fellowship, most rooms that I'd been in had at least one TFI fellow. And if not, like a teach for somewhere else fellow, right? A teach for like another country, like no kidding. So this network is huge and you should definitely be grateful for that and make the best of it.
Yeah. Go for it, Nikunj.
Sorry, just one thing I want to add, I think inspired by what Pratik and Archana have been sharing is, just like, just expand your horizons. So I think that was very helpful for me. And this is again, the brainchild of one of my friends, Dhruv. He started an organization with a Gandhi fellow. And then that organization kind of built up. It was called Grape, and it was active in Rajasthan. And the idea was to leverage the power of the two fellowships, right? And afterwards, I joined with my friends as well, right? Just don't want to talk about it much. But what I'm trying to say is, I think just the possibilities are incredible and immense. And sometimes just like take that leap of faith. Don't like, I think sometimes it's highly overrated. I think the journeys look excellent in hindsight. If you look at my journey, it will look like I am the best planner in the world. I know everything at every moment, what I was doing. Buy me a coffee and I'll tell you how all the ways that I don't know what I was doing most often the time. So there's always the benefit of hindsight. So, just experiment.
Absolutely. And that's fantastic because I'm a 2016 fellow, and I absolutely agree with the thought that it's a fellowship, it's a journey. It's not the preconceived notions, it's where it takes you. I started with wanting to work directly in public service and directly moving into large scale impact role, but working on the fellowship made me stay on the ground for 6 more years as principal and then lead teacher, and then decide to take a call and move ahead. I am not behind anybody. I'm just following my own journey, and I'm exactly where I'm meant to be in this path. So just absolutely echo with all 4 of you. Connected with what we've been discussing so far, Archana, you have worked around 4 years on policy research and consulting. Nikunj, you have worked on core implementation for more than 7 years. You work in Seva and other places. And Pratik, you have worked in core governance as well as implementation roles for more than 10 years, right? Before taking up your current role, which look very impressive, right? Your journeys are like, yes, this is traveling scholar over here. There's a person from Kennedy School. There are, we have done our degrees from foreign university. It looks very impressive and people want to do all of that, right? What I want to hear from you is how much importance has been this time spent on building the depth, right? In your journey, because you have not reached where you are immediately after your fellowship. You paid your dues, so to say, right? So how important has that time been in where you are at the moment? Nikunj, you want to give us a start?
Sorry. So when you're saying time, can you clarify, like, what time are we talking about?
Your time spent on building depth in your own role and profile, right?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm a public policy consultant. So I'm a deep generalist. Please don't ask me what that means. But essentially, it means that I need to know a lot of things. So I think depth is something that doesn't come naturally, right? However, I think one thing I would say over there is that I think a lot of my time has been spent on understanding what I don't know is what I know. And I think there are so many things that I don't know, right? From the skills that I don't know, right? And I think there are so many ways that you can learn the skill. I think for adaptive leadership, there's an excellent book that I was able to pick and leverage the community, which was again offered by TFI to kind of explore those kind of things, right? So I think one thing is it's about what I don't know half the time versus what I know, to kind of move away from the depth piece, first of all. I think the second thing is just like the knowledge of the ecosystem, the policy, right? I think it was a lot about just understand how policy making is happening in the country, who is making the policy, what kind of policies do really exist. And when I'm saying policy, I'm like talking generally, not particularly like a scheme or anything, like gender policy, climate policy, labor policy, and things like that, right? So how does that look like? But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing I think that has kind of helped in terms of just like learning is I think something that I do, and everyone who kind of reaches out to me to have a chat, is this is something I would suggest as an activity. Think about, don't close your eyes. Think about where do you want to be 15 years from now or 20 years. Numbers don't matter, right? Think about where you want to be 5 years from now. Think about where you want to be 3 years from now, and think about where you want to be next year. And have these 3-4 milestones, whatever makes sense, right? Have a very vague idea. And then go to LinkedIn, go to any network, and look at the people who are there where you want to be at all these milestones, right? And then reach out to them if you don't already, or leverage TFI network and understand, map their journey and try to piggyback on to reaching there, right? And therefore, what I'm trying to say is mentorship and learning from others is one of the best ways to build depth in anything whatsoever under the sun. So yeah.
Can go next.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think what is also important is to understand that we all got here with a lot of effort, right? Today, where we are, I don't know, when I was in the classroom, I could predict I would be here, right? First of all. Again, why? Because careers take time to build. When we say careers in public policy, we don't say, okay, you're going to be sitting right next to the prime minister and telling him what to do, right? That also will happen. But maybe, 20, 25 years down the line, when you're actually a go-to authority for education in this country, right? Or at a state level, right? Most of our, no, I know some of my, fellows from the 2011 batch, are right now. So one works with Arvind Kejriwal on looking at DCPCR, which is the child protection policies of Delhi, right? The other one is running the Punjab Good Governance Fellowship for the Punjab government, right? That didn't happen overnight, by the way. That happened after 10 years of sustained effort, right? So now what you're seeing is a lot of gray hair, right? Which I would suggest avoid. This gray hair actually means we are now doing what we envisage to do when we were in the classroom, thinking that, okay, one day I will use this experience to actually change. So in my current role, I'm looking at, getting in technology into government schools, right? In hands of teachers, right? Now I understand what problems teachers face, right? Now, can I sort of understand that on day one after I graduate out of the fellowship? No, right? Do I need a degree? Yes. Masters in public policy, all three of us, I think, have this in common, right? We've done a master's degree from a top college, right? Why is that necessary? Right? That's necessary to do 2-3 things: to build networks, to gain knowledge and skills which you don't already have, right? And to also build in deep knowledge of one sector. For example, if Archana is working into data analytics and looking at RCTs, etc., she won't get to do her independent RCT with Esther Duflo on day one, right? But in 10 years' time, yes, that's why they say experience matters. So I would say, don't start thinking on day one itself that I'm going to be a CEO, right? No, you're not going to be. Unfortunate reality is, if you start your own thing and get private equity, yes, you can be, right? There are a lot of edtech companies. You must also try. Nobody's stopping you, right? But if you go on a conventional path, you will become associate if you're a fresher, then a senior associate, assistant manager, senior manager, associate director, a senior director, COO, and then probably CEO, right? So this is the journey. Everybody follows this journey. So don't be in a thing that, oh, TFI will suddenly make you a CEO. No, it will give you the skills to become the CEO. Yes, right? Definitely, most definitely. Today, I'm a director at the age of 34, right? Had I not done TFI fellowship, I wouldn't be here, right? I wouldn't be here because I would just be trying to find my journey in multiple domains. But TFI gave me a focus area, gave me what I wanted to do. So TFI is good at 2-3 things, right? It will give you what pathway you will go on and succeed because you've understood it during the 2 years. B, it will give you a platform to actually express yourself with a lot of grounding, right? You won't be just throwing things in the air. You will say with experience, with the fact that I have. So one of the lines I always use to end arguments is like, I've been a teacher in the classroom, and the government folks on the other end is like, okay, we can't say much now because, had it not be like, I sell technology products to you. I'm not a salesman, right? I am doing it because I know the problem in the classroom for 2 years, right? Oh, आपने सरकारी स्कूल में पढ़ा है? Yes, I have taught in a government school, sir. आप लगते नहीं हो, sir, right? That's the difference, right? आप लगते नहीं हो, right? Because they think we can't do it because we're not from the system. this makes you be part of the system, right? But it doesn't change your trajectory. You will still follow the trajectory. You will still grow on a path which is defined, right? So yeah, that's what I would say.
That's fantastic, Prateek. Loved hearing and completely echo your thoughts, right? Archana, thoughts on this?
Yes, I just wanted to add to that in some way that I don't think careers need to be unidirectional and upward, right? It's not a quick race towards the top for anybody, and you don't have to design it that way, right? The thing is, for me, I've been the kind of person who's never been able to think, what will I do in 10 years, right? Because it's been very abstract for me to think in those terms. So I've always thought about, what am I learning today? What do I like doing on a day-to-day basis? Will this give me all of those things that I need in some way? And I think it's good to be humble about what we know. Like post-fellowship, you can say, I understand the inside of a classroom. I understand this one school well. Can you then expand the understanding of one school to 5 schools, maybe 10 schools? Okay. Can you then say, okay, now I understand what, a small district education system looks like, right? So I think we have to be very humble in building this slowly and a little by little, right? You can't be too overconfident about that. So I think it's important to have that grassroots experience, but also it's important to keep thinking, what is my comparative advantage, especially at the early career stage, you're at the table. So what are you bringing that's special to that space, right? And I think in some way, this grassroots understanding should be the bare minimum. Everyone at the table should already have that kind of sensibility. Currently, they don't. So that is also an advantage you will bring there. But apart from that, what special skills or what are you bringing to that table is a really important thing to keep in mind. And I think the MPP, MPA in any way, time spent at a foreign university, for me at least, has spent like time away from the system, right? I feel like my understanding has diminished in any way, which is why in the summer, I'm like, I need to go back and see what's happening, because it was post-COVID and schools had already changed a lot. And you're already, and just like how, say, in a tech job, you have to be on top and be close to what's the current reality of things. It's the same in the social space. You have to be rooted in the reality of the spaces and the people we're working with.
Awesome, Archana. I think this is a fantastic space to end our discussion. We started with discussing a little bit about what are all the skills needed, what are the mindsets needed, and we ended here by discussing that it's not a jumpstart, it's a boot camp. Teach for India provides us with necessary skills, mindsets, and thought in which eventually we'll reach our vision if we continue staying connected to the ground. Thank you so much for all your wonderful insights. It was lovely to hear it. I'll now pass it along to Pragya for the remainder of the session and closing it.
Right. Thank you so much, Amar. Thank you, Archana, Prateek, Nikunj, for such an engaging discussion. Folks, for those of you who have kept tab of time, we are running a little over time, and it really did not feel like we are overshooting. It was an extremely engaging discussion. I will try to keep this very, very snappy. I see a lot of questions on the chat that probably some of them we have been able to cover. I saw Nikunj responding to some, but some of them maybe we will. But please rest assured, we will reach out to the panelists. We will get all your questions answered. Probably not right now on this space, just because we had like so much to share. With that, here's what we.
Can I just talk once about the questions? It's fantastic to see your questions. Please know that this was a space where you can start thinking of those. You may not get responses to all of them immediately by any of the panelists or myself. Maybe you need to find responses by experiencing it, but it's been really great to see some of your questions. Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, Pragya.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. But Amar, we will try and answer as much as we can, like in a closing email. That's what we are doing, right? So we will try and resolve some of them, but some of them are just really difficult, right? Some of them were like, how do I know that 10 years down, how do I get solutions to these? So some of them you will have to actually explore what Prateek was mentioning, right? Having done the fellowship is what sort of got him to explore public policy. We'll keep this very snappy, folks. Quickly head to the chat box and write down 2 things that have gotten sort of shifted, that got strengthened, something that you learned and you're really excited to explore during the fellowship, and 1 thing that you are still curious about after today's session to learn more, right? Quickly head to the chat box and answer these 2 questions. Okay, I see stakeholder interaction. Something that got strengthened or shifted was stakeholder interaction. Thank you, Rashmi, for starting us off. Knowing the ecosystem, great. I love the responses. Policies in India are to be improved by trial. Awesome. We'll wait for a couple more responses. I also know we are joined by 90 plus people on LinkedIn itself. So kudos to that. I know my team is still working to get all questions answered. I'm sure people are responding. Biggest takeaway, expand your horizons, ability to mirror classroom to a macro. We are not here to reach only one second. Stay on the ground, keep being connected to the stakeholders. Have to work on my writing skills, data skills, stakeholder engagement. I love that. I remember Archana, Nikunj, Pratik harping on that. Data is key, right? You can't run away from data. Awesome, I love that. Okay, have to. Awesome, I will move ahead, connect to various stakeholders, and please keep thinking about the last question. What are some questions or what are some things that you're still being curious about after today's session, right? With that, I will pause this screen. I will keep it up for 30 seconds. Some of this you have already seen in the last two sessions. So go ahead and take a screenshot of this. Opportunities that you will have during the fellowship. We'll start with BTCPs, personal theory of change, retreats, career fairs. I know Pratik may be thinking like, hey, हमारे time में इतने opportunities नहीं थे. Honestly, we had to create a lot of them on our own. So yeah, quickly go ahead and take 30 seconds to take a snapshot of this. You can do your tracks, internships, and give me a quick thumbs up if you are done. Done? Okay. Moving on, here's what we have already covered, and we are done. We ended on a very high note with the Pathway Exposure series. We've covered social sector, careers in ed, and finally we heard 3 stellar speakers and a facilitator on policy and governance. And I'm really hoping that all of you are excited to start your fellowship journey. I'm going to request my team who has worked relentlessly hard to be able to bring this series of discussions with you. I'm going to request them to maybe just either put a thumbs up or a react on the chat. I have my team with Kaveri. Kaveri, just turn on your video if you're here. Vallabh, who has managed all the, LinkedIn that you are able to see. I have Upasna and Siddhant and Aparajita. These are the stellar people who have ensured that you are seeing what you are seeing today, and yours truly. But yeah, finally with that, I will end this space. And here's what is coming your way, folks. After Pathway Exposure series, this is not what we end with. You will have something called a Fellow Buddy program. These are mini learning circles that you will have with fellows. There's something called a City and Institute webinar, where you get information about Placement City and Institute information, because that's something I realize you have been really anxious about, that, hey, tell us more about how to join. And then finally this, which is called Accepted, which is like a virtual Accept retreat for the cohort of 2023. So that we formally welcome you to join the movement, and we are excited to meet you at Institute. With that, I will end. Please go ahead, put down your chat questions on the chat box. We will take them as and when, and we will try and ensure that we respond and get back to you via email. Yeah. I will stop my screen share. And great, have a good evening. We'll let you go. It's a Saturday evening. My screen. Yeah. Awesome. I hope this was helpful and you got to be inspired to join and go ahead, start the best 2 years of your life. I'm going to play some music while we